The sound of sirens pierced the quiet suburban afternoon. 3 police cars screeched to a halt in front of my house, their lights flashing urgently. Officers poured out, hands on their holsters, eyes scanning for danger. But there was no danger here, just a meticulously maintained lawn and a bewildered homeowner. As I stepped onto my porch, I couldn't help but wonder, how did a dispute over landscaping lead to this surreal scene? And more importantly, how would revealing my identity change everything? I've faced battles and public scrutiny. But nothing in my years of service could have prepared me for the day my own front yard became ground zero for a neighborhood power struggle that would expose the dark underbelly of suburban life and challenge the very notion of individual freedom in our communities. Before we dig deeper into this incredible story, I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a neighbor or authority figure overstepping their bounds? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you're ready for a journey that will make you question everything you thought you knew about suburban life, hit that subscribe button and join me as we unravel this twisted tale of lawns, lies, and local politics. This is the story of how a simple desire to beautify my property ignited a chain of events that would pit neighbor against neighbor, question the limits of authority, and ultimately lead to a showdown that would change our community forever. It's a tale of overreach, resistance, and the courage to stand up for what's right even when the opposition comes from your own backyard. As we explore this story, I want you to consider, how far would you go to protect your right to manage your own property? And at what point does community oversight become oppressive control? I've always believed in leading by example, and that includes taking pride in my home. My property isn't just a house, it's a reflection of my values and my commitment to the community I serve. But in our neighborhood, individuality often takes a backseat to conformity, and that's where our story begins. Picture a quintessential American suburb, rows of identical houses with perfectly trimmed hedges and lawns mowed to exactly 2.5 inches. Welcome to Oakwood Estates, where the Homeowners Association rules with an iron fist, and where I've called home for the past decade. At first glance, it's a picture-perfect community. But beneath the manicured surface lies a web of rules and regulations that stifle creativity and personal expression. It's a place where the color of your mailbox can spark heated debates at community meetings, and where the height of your grass is measured with the precision of a scientific experiment. At the center of this suburban pressure cooker is Karen Thompson, the HOA president. A former corporate executive with a penchant for micromanagement, Karen runs the neighborhood like her personal fiefdom. Her reign began 3 years ago, and since then, the number of HOA violations has tripled, and community tensions have reached a boiling point. Karen's backstory is one of control and perfectionism. After being forced into early retirement, she channeled her need for power into the HOA. Her motto? A perfect neighborhood is a happy neighborhood. But her version of perfection has left many residents feeling suffocated and resentful. It was a beautiful spring morning when I decided to transform my front yard. I envisioned a lush oasis of native plants, vibrant flowers, and a small water feature, a stark contrast to the cookie-cutter lawns that dominated our street. As I planted the last shrub, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. Little did I know that this act of personal expression would soon spiral into a neighborhood crisis. Within hours of completing my landscaping project, I noticed Karen standing at the edge of my property, clipboard in hand, her face a mask of disapproval. As she furiously scribbled notes, I could almost see the gears turning in her head, plotting her next move. The battle lines were drawn, and the stage was set for a confrontation that would shake our community to its core. How far would you go to maintain your property the way you want it, even if it meant challenging established rules? As we go deeper into this story, I want you to ask yourself, where do we draw the line between community standards and personal freedom? At what point does conformity become oppression? And most importantly, how far would you go to stand up for your rights as a homeowner and an individual? Stay tuned as we explore how a simple landscaping choice escalated into a neighborhood-wide conflict, exposing the hidden tensions and power dynamics that lurk beneath the surface of even the most seemingly perfect communities. The morning after I completed my landscaping project, I awoke to find a bright orange violation notice taped to my front door. Urgent, unauthorized landscape modifications, it read in bold letters. Below was a handwritten note, see me immediately. Karen. I knew this was coming, but I hadn't expected it so soon. As I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, I watched Karen march up my driveway, her face set in a grim expression of determination. Senator, she began, her voice dripping with false politeness, I hope you realize that your garden is in direct violation of at least 7 HOA bylaws. I took a sip of my coffee, savoring the moment before I responded. Good morning to you too, Karen. I'm afraid I don't see any violations here. Just a beautiful, environmentally friendly landscape. Her eyes narrowed. Your grass is over 3 inches tall. Your flower beds exceed the permitted square footage. And don't even get me started on that water feature. She spat out the last 2 words as if they were poison. Karen, I said calmly, I've reviewed the HOA guidelines thoroughly. My landscaping doesn't violate any rules. In fact, it's in line with the city's new water conservation initiative. For a moment, I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. But it was quickly replaced by a look of steely resolve. We'll see about that, Senator. This isn't over. As she stormed off, I couldn't help but feel a mix of amusement and concern. I knew Karen well enough to realize that this was just the opening salvo in what promised to be a protracted battle. Over the next few weeks, Karen's campaign against my yard intensified. Every morning brought a new violation notice, each more absurd than the last. Excessive butterfly attraction. Non-regulation shade of green. Unapproved water sounds. But I stood my ground. For every notice, I sent a carefully worded response, citing relevant laws and regulations that supported my position. My years in the state Senate had taught me the value of thorough documentation and clear communication. Karen, however, was not one to back down easily. She began issuing fines $100, $200, $500 per day. The letters became more threatening, hinting at legal action and forced compliance. Your continued defiance is a threat to property values and community standards, one letter read. Failure to comply will result in severe consequences. But Karen's most insidious tactic was turning my neighbors against me. She went door to door, spinning tales of how my jungle would attract pests and criminals, how it would lower property values and destroy the character of the neighborhood. Some neighbors bought into her fear-mongering. I'd catch them glaring at my house as they walked by, whispering to each other and shaking their heads. Others, however, saw through Karen's tactics. They'd stop by to admire my garden, some even asking for landscaping advice. The neighborhood was becoming divided, and tensions were rising. I knew things were about to come to a head, but I never imagined how far Karen would go to assert her authority. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I heard the sirens. At first, I thought they were passing by, but to my shock, 3 police cars pulled up in front of my house, lights flashing. As officers approached my door, I could see Karen standing across the street, a triumphant smirk on her face. It was then that I realized the depths of her desperation. Sir, we've received a report of suspicious activity at this address, one officer said as I opened the door. The caller suggested there might be fraudulent activities occurring here. I was stunned. Officer, I can assure you there's no fraud happening here. I'm a state senator. This is clearly a misunderstanding. The officer's eyebrows shot up in recognition, but he maintained his professional demeanor. Nevertheless, sir, we need to investigate the complaint. May we come in? As I led the officers through my home, explaining the situation, I couldn't help but contemplate the serious legal and ethical implications of Karen's actions. Making a false report to the police is a crime, one that wastes valuable resources and can have severe consequences. I also thought about the broader implications. How many other homeowners had faced similar harassment? How many had given in to unreasonable demands out of fear or exhaustion? Karen's abuse of power went beyond mere pettiness, it was a threat to the very fabric of our community. As we stepped into my backyard, the officer's expressions changed from suspicion to confusion, and then to barely concealed amusement. Instead of evidence of a crime, they were confronted with a meticulously maintained garden, complete with native plants, a small pond, and a gently bubbling fountain. "This is what all the fuss is about," one officer muttered, shaking his head. I took a deep breath, deciding it was time to lay all my cards on the table. "Officers, I believe you've been called here under false pretenses. This is the culmination of an ongoing dispute with our HOA president, who objects to my landscaping choices." I proceeded to show them the stack of violation notices, my responses, and the increasingly threatening letters from Karen. The officers listened intently, their faces growing more serious as they realized the extent of the situation. "Sir," the lead officer said finally, "I want to apologize for the inconvenience. It's clear there's no criminal activity here. However, I am concerned about the nature of this complaint and the pattern of harassment you've described." As we walked back to the front of the house, we could see Karen still watching from across the street, her smug expression now replaced with one of uncertainty. The lead officer turned to me. "Senator, would you like to press charges for filing a false police report?" I looked at Karen, then back at the officer. The decision I made at that moment would have far-reaching consequences, not just for me and Karen, but for our entire community. Have you ever witnessed someone abuse their authority to this extent? How would you react in a similar situation? As we pause to reflect on this pivotal moment, I want you to consider the broader implications of this situation. How does unchecked authority, even in something as seemingly trivial as a homeowners association, impact our daily lives? At what point does enforcing rules cross the line into harassment or even criminal behavior? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Have you ever faced a similar situation? How did you handle it? Your insights could help others who might be dealing with similar challenges in their own communities. When we return, we'll explore the aftermath of this confrontation and the ripple effects it had throughout our neighborhood and beyond. Stay tuned to see how this suburban showdown ultimately reshaped our community's approach to governance and individual rights. As the lead officer asked if I wanted to press charges, I could see the color drain from Karen's face across the street. It was clear she hadn't anticipated this turn of events. "Officers," I began, "before we proceed, I think it's important that you understand the full context of this situation." I pulled out my state Senate ID and handed it to the lead officer. "I'm a state senator, and I believe my position may have played a role in escalating this dispute." The officer's eyes widened in recognition. Their demeanor shifted instantly from professional detachment to a mix of respect and embarrassment. "Senator," the lead officer said, clearing his throat, "I want to assure you that we had no idea. This is highly irregular." I nodded, understanding their position. "I appreciate that, officer. And I want to be clear, I don't expect any special treatment. But I do expect the law to be applied fairly and justly for everyone in this community." As we spoke, I noticed Karen approaching, her earlier confidence now replaced by visible panic. She had clearly underestimated both my resolve and my resources. "Senator," she began, her voice trembling, "I had no idea. This is all just a misunderstanding. Surely we can work this out without involving the authorities?" The irony of her statement, given that she had just called the police on me, wasn't lost on anyone present. The officers exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with the situation they had been drawn into. Despite Karen's pleas and the officer's obvious discomfort, I knew that this moment was pivotal. It wasn't just about my yard anymore, it was about standing up against abuse of power and ensuring justice for everyone in our community. "I'm afraid it's too late for that, Karen," I said firmly. "Your actions today, and over the past few weeks, go beyond a simple misunderstanding. You've harassed me, attempted to turn our neighbors against each other, and now you've filed a false police report. These are serious offenses." Turning to the officers, I continued, "I would like to press charges for filing a false police report. Additionally, I'll be filing a civil suit against the HOA for harassment and abuse of power." The lead officer nodded solemnly. We'll need you to come down to the station to file a formal complaint, Senator. As for you, ma'am, he said, turning to Karen, I'm going to have to ask you to come with us for questioning. As Karen was led away, looking shell-shocked, I felt a mix of emotions. There was no joy in this moment, only a grim satisfaction that justice was being served. In the days that followed, I worked closely with my legal team to build a case not just against Karen, but against the systemic issues within our HOA that had allowed this situation to develop. We uncovered a pattern of selective enforcement, financial mismanagement, and abuse of power that went far beyond my individual case. The legal proceedings that followed were lengthy and at times contentious. But they were necessary. It wasn't about revenge, it was about accountability and setting a precedent that would protect all homeowners from similar abuses in the future. News of the incident spread quickly through our neighborhood and beyond. What had started as a dispute over landscaping had exposed deeper issues of governance, individual rights, and the balance of power in our community. In the weeks that followed, our neighborhood saw an unprecedented level of engagement. Homeowners who had previously stayed silent began to speak up about their own experiences with HOA overreach. Community meetings, once sparsely attended, were now packed with residents eager to have their voices heard. The incident sparked a broader conversation about the role of HOAs in our society. Local news outlets picked up the story, and soon we were at the center of a national debate about property rights and community standards. Many residents, inspired by my stand, began to push back against overly restrictive HOA rules. We saw a surge of creativity in landscaping and home improvements as people felt empowered to express their individuality. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were those who worried that relaxing standards would lead to chaos and declining property values. Finding a balance became the key challenge. In response, we formed a community task force to review and revise our HOA bylaws. The goal was to create guidelines that maintained the overall aesthetic of the neighborhood while allowing for more individual expression and sustainable practices. This process wasn't easy. It involved countless hours of meetings, debates, and compromises. But in the end, we emerged with a new set of guidelines that the majority of residents felt were fair and reasonable. As I reflect on this experience, I'm reminded of why I entered public service in the first place. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult or unpopular. It's about giving a voice to those who might not have the resources or platform to speak for themselves. This incident in my own front yard taught me valuable lessons that I've carried into my work in the state Senate. It reinforced the importance of listening to all sides of an issue, of seeking compromise without compromising one's principles, and of the power of community engagement in creating lasting change. I've come to see that no issue is too small when it comes to justice and individual rights. What happens in our neighborhoods and our HOAs is a microcosm of larger societal issues. By addressing these challenges at the local level, we create ripple effects that can lead to broader change. This experience has made me a more effective legislator and a more empathetic leader. It's reminded me of the real-world impacts of the laws we pass and the importance of considering unintended consequences. Most importantly, it's reinforced my belief in the power of individual action. One person standing up can inspire others to do the same, creating a movement that can transform a community. How can we strike a balance between maintaining community standards and respecting individual property rights? As we conclude this story, I want to leave you with this question to ponder. In your own communities, how do you navigate the tension between collective standards and individual expression? What steps can we take to create neighborhoods that are both cohesive and diverse, that maintain their value while allowing for personal freedom? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your insights could help shape the future of community governance and individual rights in neighborhoods across the country. Remember, change starts in our own backyards, sometimes literally. By engaging in these important conversations and standing up for what we believe in, we can create communities that truly reflect our values and aspirations. As we come to the end of this journey, I want to emphasize that this story isn't just about me or my neighborhood. It's about all of us and the communities we call home. It's a call to action for every homeowner, every citizen who values their rights and the power of community. First and foremost, I urge you to educate yourselves about your rights as homeowners. Whether you live in an HOA-governed community or not, understanding local laws and regulations is crucial. Knowledge is power, and it's your first line of defense against potential abuses. Secondly, get involved in your local governance. Attend HOA meetings, city council sessions, and community forums. Your voice matters, and your participation can shape the future of your neighborhood. Don't wait for issues to arise before you engage. Be proactive in creating the community you want to live in. If you see something that doesn't seem right, speak up. Whether it's an unfair HOA rule, selective enforcement, or any form of discrimination, don't stay silent. Reach out to your neighbors, build coalitions, and work together to address issues. Consider running for positions within your HOA or local government. The best way to ensure fair and just governance is to be part of the decision-making process. Your unique perspective and experiences can contribute to creating more inclusive and equitable communities. Lastly, support organizations that advocate for homeowners' rights and fair housing practices. These groups often provide valuable resources and can offer support if you find yourself in a situation similar to mine. Remember, the power to shape our communities lies in our hands. It's up to us to use it wisely and responsibly. As I reflect on this experience, I'm struck by how a simple act of planting a garden became a catalyst for significant change. It reminds me of a quote by anthropologist Margaret Mead: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." This journey has reinforced my belief in the power of standing up for what's right, even in the face of intimidation or adversity. It's shown me that small acts of resistance against unjust authority can snowball into movements that transform entire communities. But it's also taught me the importance of empathy and understanding. Even those who oppose us often do so out of fear or a misguided sense of what's best for the community. By engaging in open dialogue and seeking common ground, we can often find solutions that benefit everyone. The changes we've seen in our neighborhood, from more diverse landscaping to more engaged and empowered residents, are a testament to what's possible when people come together to create positive change. It's a reminder that our actions, no matter how small they might seem, can have far-reaching impacts. As we move forward, let's carry these lessons with us. Let's continue to question unjust rules, to stand up for our rights and the rights of our neighbors. But let's also remember to do so with compassion and a willingness to listen and compromise. Our communities are what we make of them. By staying engaged, informed, and committed to justice, we can create neighborhoods that are not just aesthetically pleasing, but truly reflect the values of diversity, sustainability, and individual freedom that we hold dear. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope my story has inspired you to take action in your own communities. Remember, change starts with you. What will you do to make a difference? Remember, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.